Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Skill Up series session. My name is Emily Springer. I'm a graduate learning specialist in the Graduate Studies Support Center, and I am very excited to be able to bring you today's session with Dr. Jennifer Biddle and Dr. Vicki Lindsay. Best practice strategies to be successful in the CMP course. This session today has been a session that has been asked for by students, staff, and faculty alike. So we are very excited to be able to present it to you. I have very few brief housekeeping items to review before I bring this over to our presenter. We are recording our session. We have our scrolling subtitles available at the bottom. So feel free to enable them for your viewing pleasure. We have our wonderful ASL interpreter here as well today. Very thrilled to be able to provide that service for all of our students in the interest of inclusivity. And we would like to have questions in the Q&A. Please feel free to have conversation in the chat. And if you need help with anything on the technical side of Zoom, please find me there in the chat and I'm happy to help you out. That about does it for my housekeeping items. And I know that Dr. Jennifer Biddle will be starting us off in today's presentation. Dr. Biddle?
Thank you so much, Emily. And thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it. So as Emily said, I'm Dr. Biddle and you are going to hear from Dr. Lindsay in just a little bit. We are both from the School of Public Service, and we both chair dissertations in the Doctoral of Criminal Justice program. So before we get started with some of the best practice strategies, I thought it would be useful to kind of go over some of the things that are going to be discussed today. So where we're going to start is what is the comp? I know a lot of you on the call are in different stages of the program. You might be just starting your dissertation program. So I think it's necessary to kind of take a step back and say, all right, what is the comp? And we'll also talk a little bit about how it's a little bit different than maybe your content classes were. Then the next thing we're going to talk about is building your skills and really the value in those content classes of working on your skills so that when you get to the comp class and you get to the dissertation sequence, you're really a lot more efficient in the process. Then we'll talk a bit about the importance of communication, followed by familiarizing yourself with the dissertation process, how to choose a topic, identifying a problem, the purpose statement, the different types of the method and design that are possibilities for that you'll begin in the comp class and later work into the dissertation, data collection and analysis, and then a couple of other helpful ideas. Okay, so after the content classes are completed, a student enters what's called the comp class. So formally, it's referred to as the pre-candidacy perspective course. But since nobody really wants to say that, we typically refer to it as the comp course. So at that point, all of your core classes have been completed. Now, during this comp class, you'll begin to develop what we refer to as the prospectus. It's a document that provides detailed information about your research study. The prospectus includes information about the problem that you're going to look at, which will subsequently be in your dissertation, and the relevant research methodology and design that you plan to use. Students during the prospectus begin to create and compile the foundational elements that turn into the doctoral dissertation. So think of it more as a mini proposal. It doesn't have kind of the legs that a dissertation has, but it has those foundational elements to begin with. In order to move into the dissertation sequence, an approved prospectus is required before you are eligible for candidacy in the dissertation sequence. So basically, at the end of the comp class, your prospectus needs to meet the rubric criteria in order for you to enter the dissertation sequence. So the comp course is a little bit different than what students may have been used to thus far. In the content classes, we're typically used to submitting an assignment, receiving a grade. So it's a little bit different in the comp course. Although there'll still be weekly submissions, you're adding sections to a single document each week. So you're really developing this perspective, which has multiple pieces. So you're working on each piece. So you're kind of these building blocks that you're putting together. Also, it's a little different from, maybe some of the assignments of the past, is now you are going to have a specific template that you use in order to, kind of guide you through the process. In addition, when the feedback is received each week, you'll make revisions and adjustments to the previous work. This is called a iterative process. And this is something that you will absolutely use in the dissertation as well. So instead of that weekly grade that you're receiving and then moving on to a subsequent assignment, you're taking that feedback, you're incorporating it into maybe a section you've already drafted and then drafting something new. So prior to the comp class and subsequent dissertation sequence, it's really important to work on building your skills. Some of those skills include your writing skills, understanding the basics of APA, paragraph development, proper paraphrasing, the importance of scholarly writing and how to increase your ability to scholarly write, familiarizing yourself with the writing resources that are available. I always tell students that if you're struggling, for example, with developing a paragraph, it's much easier to work on developing and enhancing these skills in the content classes because the assignments are a bit smaller. So, if you're working on paragraph development within a 3-5 page paper, that's much more manageable than trying to work on paragraph development in the comp class or in the dissertation sequence, when now your dissertation is ultimately going to be, 130, 150 pages. So it's really important that whatever you might need assistance on, if it's APA, if it's writing introductions, that you're addressing those things and you're building those skills during the content classes prior to the and during the comp. It's also really important that you familiarize yourself with the research methodology and design, the differences in the designs, the variations in methodology. You can do this prior to taking your methods classes, during, of course, but understanding just the different types of ways that the research can be conducted is really important. It's also important that you capitalize on the feedback that you receive from your professors. And one of the ways to do that is to keep a feedback journal. From week to week, you'll write the feedback that you receive from professors, and you'll notice that you form themes. It really helps you identify some of the things that you need maybe to work on or to improve, some of the things that you really do well. And it also allows you to see your academic progress. You might see in your earlier classes where you consistently got feedback on paraphrasing and inserting citations. There is a need to insert citations, where later feedback maybe doesn't reflect that as much. And that's academic progress, that you've increased your skills in this area. And it also provides specific direction to focus on. Sometimes especially you're maybe not sure what you need to develop on. But if you're looking at this journal and you're looking at, okay, I see this trend here that more than one professor is saying that, maybe I need to spend some more time on my introductions. That's an area where you can go to the Academic Success Center and join a group session, or reach out to your professor of, what are some other things that I can do to increase the efficiency and effectiveness of my introduction. So in terms of communication with your chair is essential. The professor that you have in the comp class will subsequently be the chair of your dissertation. So it's really important that you are maintaining consistent communication. This consistent communication really helps to address obstacles and uncertainty. If there's, you have an idea for design, but you don't necessarily know how you're going to access a population, that's, an opportunity for you and the chair to kind of, talk it through, come up with different ideas. So typically, I personally recommend at least weekly meetings once you enter the comp with your professor, who will eventually become your chair. Of course, these weekly meetings are to answer questions, but they're also an opportunity to strategize. That, it gives a chance for the student to say, hey, this is what I want to do, and for the chair to kind of guide that discussion. It also works, these weekly meetings, as a temperature check. A lot of times it really helps with student accountability, that they know, oh, Tuesday at 10 a.m., I have to meet with my chair. So to, kind of put you in that seat, so you're taking that active time. So sometimes, it really works in terms of accountability. It also helps to establish a personal relationship. It really, having these weekly meetings really helps the chair to understand how the student learned. And it creates a more effective relationship in terms of, because each individual student's journey is going to be different. Students learn at different rates and different paces. So it really personalizes the relationship so that a chair can be successful in providing each individual student with the things that they need. Okay. So it's really important, and this can be done prior to entering the comp class, to familiarize yourself with the dissertation resources. The Dissertation Center, which I included the address above. At the Dissertation Center, you have the dissertation template. This is what you will use. So once you move from the comp and the prospectus, this is the template that you will use to create your dissertation. So it has the different requirements for each chapter. So even if you're not at that stage yet, the more that you can familiarize yourself with all of these things, the more efficient you're going to be in the process. So you will also want to take a look at the dissertation rubric. For each chapter to get approved, there's specific criteria that need to be met. So it's really important now to take a look at that rubric. It's also a good idea to go to the library and review some of the dissertations that have been done. Pick a topic that you're interested in and review the dissertation. Again, the more that you're familiar with how the dissertation is going to look, what the elements are that are in it, the more comfortable you're going to be when you get to that stage. And you can absolutely do this during your content classes, especially during the prospectus. It really creates a more efficient process. It's also important to attend some of the library dissertation tool sessions, reading a scholarly article, how to identify the literature gap in future research, how to organize research, citing articles and similar sources, and evaluating use and useful information. All of these things, the more that you read scholarly articles, the more you're able to understand them, the more you're able to interpret them. So just really diving into the literature. And the more that we look at what's been done in the literature, the more we're able to identify where some of these gaps may be. So in terms of, there's a couple of opportunities here. So one of the opportunities to familiarize yourself with the dissertation process is to participate in the virtual dissertation preparedness series. This focuses on understanding the dissertation sequence and how to better prepare for it. It's designed to focus on major topics for students pursuing their degree in one-to-one doctoral programs, and it prepares students as they enter the dissertation sequence. So again, it's just what to expect, because this, as we talked about earlier, it's a bit different than the content courses. So the more that you can understand what this is going to look like, the more comfortable you'll be once you get there. Another opportunity is to attend one of the dissertation boot camps. This consists of 2.5 days of face-to-face critical thinking dissertation development, provides support for research study alignment and feasibility, modeling of research methods, and provides students the necessary tools to complete the dissertation. So during these 2.5 days, NU faculty work alongside students individually and in cohort. Of course, they answer questions, explain the program and the expectations, and help students gain confidence and drive that are necessary for the doctoral journey. So there is an upcoming dissertation boot camp in Dallas that's at the end of the month. That registration is still open. And then there's also one that's coming in November, and that'll be in San Diego. So those are opportunities to keep in mind to, again, increase this efficiency in the process. So in terms of choosing a topic, students typically come into the program, into the comp course in a variety of different stages. Sometimes, students have an idea of what topic they'd like to pursue. Other times they're really not sure. In the event of being really not sure, maybe, I don't know what topic I want to explore. One of the more effective ways is during your specialization courses to explore some of the topics that you're discussing from week to week. Maybe something piques your interest that you're kind of like, hey, I'd really like to learn a little bit more about that. So you want to take these opportunities to explore topics that interest you and that align with your degree program. So once you kind of have a topic in mind that you're thinking, okay, maybe I can, explore this a little bit more, develop a literature review using the potential topic. There will be assignments in your content courses where you're able to pick what topic you would like to do. Choose a topic that might potentially become, the comp prospectus topic, which will lead into the dissertation topic. Explore the literature that's been done on it. Okay. And when you critically explore the literature, you're taking note that things that have been researched and the gaps that exist. So a lot of times, and we'll talk about it on the next slide, is the dissertation needs to be based on a problem. So many times students are like, well, I don't necessarily know what the problem is. Well, you wouldn't know what the problem is until you understand the literature around the topic. So basically, the more that you read on that topic, what happens is you start to identify, okay, I see A, B, and C has been done a lot, but I'm not seeing D, E, and F. And one of the other strategies is when you're reading articles, most scholarly articles will have a section on their limitations. They'll basically spell out to you, we did this in our study, but we were unable to do that. And that really identifies some of the possible gaps within the research. So in terms of identifying a problem, as I indicated, the dissertation needs to be based on a problem, and you begin developing that problem in the comp class. So the problem statement needs to be specific and describe a specific problem that is based on scholarly research. So that's where these citations come from. In the problem statement, you need to identify who's impacted by this problem and the consequences of not solving this problem. Also, you need to explain the knowledge needed to solve the problem. What is currently unknown that we need to know? So a proper research problem can be defined as a specific evidence-based real-life issue faced by certain people or organizations that have significant negative complications. Okay, so before I turn it over to Dr. Lindsay, are there any questions?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I will go ahead and ask a few that have come up, and then we can go from there. Let me see. I'm scrolling up in the chat. I'm going to start in the Q&A first.
Okay.
Would you say that the CMP is similar to the research methods class?
No, so the research methods class is solely focused on the different, it's not topic oriented. And what I mean by that is the comp class is you're going to be focusing your prospectus on the topic that you want to use for the dissertation. So the research methods classes are going to be general, where you're discussing both quantitative and qualitative methods. You're going to be discussing the different types of designs. So they're really not geared towards a specific topic, but they do provide the foundation of understanding the different types of research that can be done, so that when you choose your topic, you start to think of, okay, well, do I want to conduct a qualitative study? Do I want to conduct a quantitative study based on this specific topic?
Thank you so much, Dr. Biddle.
Yep.
While we go to the next question, is it all right if you go just to the previous slide for one of our viewers who's trying to grab that information?
Sure.
Okay. The next question in the Q&A, how is the CMP professor chair assigned? Do we have a voice in that?
So in some schools, I can only speak for my school in particular.
Okay.
But if a student would like to request a professor, maybe a professor they've had in their, content class, they can do that. They can put in a formal request to the dean's office. From my understanding, scheduling does the best that they can to be able to accommodate. The way that our schedules work is typically like we'll have slots open. So if you have a chair who's kind of dissertation heavy, they might not have a lot of slots available very often. But when the school can accommodate, it absolutely does.
Thank you so much, Dr. Biddle. And there was another question for where the prospectus template is for the dissertation template. So I'm going to go ahead and pop the links for.
Yeah, so that would be in the dissertation center.
Yep, for the DSE, and then if you're an applied dissertation, I will put the ADE link as well too. So that's going to depend on your program. And then one more question for right now, and then we'll move on and we can come back to some of the other questions I've seen in the chat.
Okay.
But do you recommend attending the boot camp during comps class or waiting until the dissertation journey actually begins? And you can share your opinion on this, Dr. Biddle, and then I will share my 2 cents from attending dissertation.
Since you're kind of in the throes of it, when do you feel?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well then I'll share my opinion on that. I think it's going to depend on each student, where they're at, how much they understand about the dissertation process. For me, I went when I was in my review of literature course, and it was very beneficial for me as a doctoral student. But I have seen students who are there who are actually in their dissertation sequence, and it has been beneficial to them, or to other students who have kind of just began their journey, and they also gained knowledge and information that prepared them to be more successful in their program. So if you do have more questions about boot camp, I saw Dr. Gary popped the link in the chat. Thank you, Dr. Gary, for that. But there's more information there. And of course, you can contact James Rogers, and I will also put that information in the chat if you have questions about boot camp and the benefits of that session. That is optional to our students.
Emily, it's Dr. Gary as well. I know hi everyone. I know the webinar will continue, so I'll also put my email in there. I was a former student and I went twice, and so if you want to reach out to me, I'd love to have a one-off and one-on-one with you as well. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Gary. And Dr. Biddle, that's it for right now. So
okay,
I'll pass it back to you.
I will turn it over to Dr. Lindsay.
Hello all. So the main 2 sections that we decided to focus on in this webinar were the problem and the purpose, as we're talking about the prospectus that all students have to go through in the CMP course. So Dr. Biddle took the problem, and I'm now going to take the purpose. So all dissertations need some sort of primary project. This is the main idea of the dissertation, and it must align to that problem statement and be the next correct step stemming from the problem. So if your problem is that we don't know anything about this, your next step is, how do I find that information? Or I'm going to get that information to give you. And it can consist of a qualitative or quantitative or even mixed methods if your school thinks that mixed methods is a good way to go as well. There are approximately 13 items that are needed within a purpose statement. Okay, these are the 13 items, but I'm going to go through each individual one so you don't have to look at these teeny tiny little words here. But these are the items that are needed for a proper purpose statement, and I'll quickly go over each one of them. Is the method and design. The purpose statement should actually start with the purpose of this qualitative, quantitative, mixed method study, whichever one it is to find your answer. Your choices are quantitative, qualitative, or mixed methods, and then you put the design as well. So figure out which one you want to do in those research methods courses. While in the courses, try to work your project both ways. If your methods course allows you to do this. So in your qualitative course, work it qualitatively to figure out maybe that's the best way to do it. If it's a quantitative course, work it quantitatively, and you might have a better way of working it. So even though that you might be completely married to one method, it's always best to turn the other way just in case you find the other method may not work well with your research question. As well, I also say to grab those seminal sources early and often. The School of Education made this great resource that's on that page right there, that's seminal authors. Don't use the sources that are found in most current literature for your methods unless you're showing that the design and method have been used by others who conducted research like yours. This will only show that others have used this method and design. It doesn't show the proper ways of doing it or the most knowledgeable ways. And the next one are the constructs and variables. And when you develop your purpose, it should match your research question exactly. The question will contain either variables or constructs. Constructs are broad topics that are in your research question. These are not measured in qualitative, but they are the main thing that you're trying to find in your study. For example, if you are asking about how the organization's culture has changed with people working from home, your construct would be organizational culture. So this should be defined in your purpose, as many researchers' ideas of organizational cultures might be different. As well, you may be asked to clarify what you mean or make the term more concise when you're talking about what you say as organizational culture. If you decide to have a quantitative study, you need to do the same thing with variables. Variables are the constructs that are measured in quantitative studies. You should make sure that you can define these and measure your variables. Variables and constructs are found in can be found with instrumentation. Instrumentation is the scale, the questionnaire, the interview questions that will be used to find your measures or constructs from the individuals. You should be looking for an instrument that has been already published and used once you know what your variable might be. If you're conducting a qualitative study, you will want to explain if you're conducting an interview and how many questions may be in that interview, or if your interview might be structured or semi-structured. You should explain the approximate number of questions that you might have so that when you do decide to do interviews, your chair will understand that the number of questions fit your design. And remember, those designs go back to that same seminal authors and what the seminal authors say. Next slide, please. Now, your target population is the next little group thing that's on the 13 steps that are needed. And this is the broad group of people who meet your criteria for this study. You're going to think, who is your overall population? And then you're going to determine who your target population is. Who can actually answer that research question for you? If you're asking, let's say, about police officers and their level of stress while patrolling, your target population must be that group of police officers. It's not going to be the general population of all people in the United States. So your target population will be the police officers who are patrolling, so patrol officers. Only those who are the police officers or patrol officers who experience everyday patrol work would be able to answer your questions. Administrators of police agencies can't answer patrol stress, so make sure that you have that perfect target population picked. Then you're going to look at your research setting. Most people nowadays are going online. So where would this happen? Are you going to do an interview over Zoom? Are you going to give questionnaires out to the local department? Will your permissions be needed? So you'll need to go to the IRB website and try to figure out, will you need permission for your research setting? If you're going to use a police department, make sure that you try to figure out if you're using their email addresses. You're going to need to get permission for that. Your sampling frame is your list. Okay, so just think sampling frame equals to list. Who will you need to contact on the group's HR to obtain that email listserv? Are you planning on using a third-party provider like Qualtrics? Or are you planning on using your own social media like Facebook? Okay. The next one is your sampling method. And what type of sampling method are you going to use? There's a bunch of different types of sampling methods out there. There's simple random sampling, systematic, convenient, purposive. All of these are used in different designs, like simple random and systematic can be used with quantitative designs. Convenient and purposive are normally used in qualitative. So know those designs from those methods courses and come back and try to figure out which sampling method you're going to use to grab your sample. And then you're going to decide what type of method can be used with your, then you're going to try to figure out your sample size. Know what type of method you're going to use with your design to gather that sample size. Qualitative samples need to be justified by scholarly sources. Go to the seminal authors over and over, grab those scholarly sources to determine what kind of sample size works with a case study, what size sample has to be with a phenomenological study. Quantitative has to be justified by a G-power analysis normally. These are tiny little software applications that you are going to probably talk about in your quantitative course. So just get really familiar with that G-power analysis to figure out how many people you're going to need to answer your research questions. Then you're going to talk about your data collection method, including the instrumentation that you will have. So will you be using a questionnaire, a survey, an interview, a focus group, an observation, or archival data? You may decide you would be easiest to do something like conduct a survey and collect like 30 people with the survey, but is this actually correct? So go back to the seminal sources over and over, make sure that you have the correct data collection method for the type of design that you're planning on using. So you can tell I really am pushing those seminal sources that the School of Education actually put out. They're really great. And then you're going to look at the data analysis method. What type of software can I use for analysis and how can I use it? So for qualitative studies, you're going to need open-ended, thick, rich descriptions of your results, your answers. There are 6 different types of analysis methods can be used. with the qualitative studies, content analysis, thematic analysis, interpretive phenomenological analysis, grounded theory analysis, and discourse. This really depends on the type of design that you're using. You'll learn about a lot of these in your methods courses. National offers in vivo free to students for their dissertation if they're doing a qualitative dissertation. So to get in vivo, just talk to your chair and we can easily work that out to give you that for free. As well, quantitative, we're dealing with numbers and measures to find what's significant. And the analysis is based on answering the hypothesis of the using inferential statistics. So you're going to need to figure out in your statistics course, maybe which type of statistic to use to determine how to answer your research question. National offers SPSS free to all students, and I believe you get that in your statistics course. So jump on it if you're able to get it. And then you need to figure out a closing statement as to how the study may inform educational theory or just an applied overall. How does it help the world? So how would your project maybe add to theoretical framework? How is it going to help your idea, the people that you're studying? How will it help the world? So find that theory now. For School of Business and Economics students and School of Public Safety students, or sorry, not theoretical framework is in week 4 of the scholarly literary review class, week 2 of the qualitative methods class, and for SOBI students, it's week 4 of the comp. So you're going to see this often. So get that theory now to figure out what you're going to do. And then other helpful hints, while in the qualitative and quantitative class, I recommend working toward that CMP class as the signature assignment of both qualitative and quantitative are a prospectus. So that kind of seems elementary to me that you're going to work toward building that prospectus both ways. So try it both ways, and then by the end of the course, you should have a prospectus that you can possibly use in the CMP course. As I say all through this, grab those seminal sources early and often, and you will have this resource in your PowerPoint presentation. And don't try to use sources that are found in more current literature. Use the seminal sources more than anyone else, more than the more current literature. As well, go to ProQuest dissertations at NC, is it national now or is it NCU now in the library? Only search from 2021 forward as the dissertation template changed, so you can know what that dissertation template should look like. Remember to go to the Dissertation Center to view the templates and rubrics. And once it does meet those guidelines and rubrics, it passes. So just make sure that you converse with your chair often so that you can get those and know what that feedback is and change it as it goes so it can pass. Okay. And for the School of Public Service, that's what we are. We're starting a new Chat with a Chair office hours where you can come and go as you please. It's starting in August. So week 1 is actually August 11th. And you will see those times there. And then it's going to be the following weeks after that. And you can ask any question that you want to ask, like some of the ones that probably appeared in the chat room. And you can talk about anything you want to talk about in that with a chair that does dissertations for the School of Public Safety. Any questions?
Wonderful. We have several questions.
Oh no.
No, that's
Jen's not
okay.
back, right?
That's okay. I know she came back and and I'm not sure if she, oh wait, hold on.
Yes,
Dr.
I'm
Biddle.
back. I'm so
Okay.
sorry.
Don't
I
apologize.
lost power. Like everything went black twice.
No,
And then I
no.
almost got in and it went black again.
No problem whatsoever. Truly, nature does run the world.
Mm.
So, I do have a couple of questions. I did notice someone mentioned something about SPSS software expires after the course is completed. I am gonna put in the chat the steps to update your license. As long as you're an active NU student, you should have access to that software. So please feel free to contact me directly if you need assistance with that. But questions in the Q&A, I'm going to start with this one. How do you find an instrument that has already been used?
Good question. Okay, so there is a thing in the library called measures and instruments, I want to say. You can ask the librarian, but to help you with that. But you can either look at past articles that had the same type of constructs and variables, or you can even go to the library and grab that measures source, and it shows everything that's out there. When you find your instrument that you want to use, make sure you ask the author that created the measurement scale. Ask them if you could use their scale. Sometimes you can get it for free, which is great. And sometimes they do make money off of them. So watch which one you want to use.
And Dr. Lindsay, thank you so much for addressing part of that. I have to share that Amanda Bizette is on the call as well too, and she would love to just further expand on this question. Are you able to put a little bit of clarification in the chat for us as well too? I'll move on to the next question.
I probably got the title completely wrong of that whole web area that you go to, but yeah.
No worries. Someone's asking a question about the gatekeeper. Would the gatekeeper go in the sampling frame? Amber, are you able to unmute and further expand on this question?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hi, Amber.
Hello, thank you very much for the presentation today, everyone there. So I just wanted, yes, so for my dissertation, I'm basically, when I say gatekeeper, it's basically like the contact person. So I have people that are within the field of suicide survivors, and they have access to those type of participants. So they would give me access to the participant. They're the gatekeeper, the way in to get the access to the participant. They're the experts in that.
Yeah, that normally doesn't belong in the purpose, but the actual participants, like the list. So, and you probably don't want to put the name of the suicide prevention specialist area in there. So you would talk about having a group of suicide. I don't really know what you're doing yours on, but you would talk about obtaining a group of suicide survivors, maybe, and that's your actual frame where you're getting, and then your person is where you're getting them from. So you don't put her name, no.
Do I say the name of the person, or I just say the group suicide survivors will give me access to the other participants?
Yes, that way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for your question, Amber. And then, as always, when we are discussing our personal research ideas and topics, we always recommend that you ask for clarification with your chair as well, to understand the best practice for that. But I do have to mention that Amanda was kind enough to respond in the chat, finding tests and measurements. So Dr. Lindsay, we're not far off. To start there, they recommend there's a guide right there for your resources. So please make sure You can also schedule a research consultation with a librarian if you're having difficulty finding instrument on your study. And I, for one, highly recommend that. Another question for CMP, since we have a little bit more time. Do I have to have the problem and purpose statement figured out in the research methods course, or is there some time to figure that out after that class before comps?
For your best benefit, I would really start looking for that idea in the beginning of your methods block. So normally your beginning would be a scholarly lit review. So I would really want to be able to make the most of those courses, try to know what you want to do in that scholarly lit review class so you can carry it through. Most of the people that do really well in the CMP course have a year's worth of research ahead of them already that they've already done. So try to get as soon as possible. However, you don't need to have the same thing if you find, oh, everything fell apart, someone already did this already. You don't have to use that idea. You can change it, but I would really recommend that you find what you want to do prior.
Thanks, Dr. Lindsay. And I appreciate you sharing best case scenario, but of course we do certainly have students who change their mind, or one reason or another the research needs to change. Dr. Garrett, are you able to unmute?
Yep, I think so. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, so I just wanted to chime in on a couple of things that had popped up because it relates to IRB as well. And as someone who has been on the IRB, I want to encourage you all to don't delay in thinking about the IRB and thinking about feasibility of your study. So when the student mentioned the gatekeepers, getting in touch with those gatekeepers and working on obtaining permissions and things like that is important to get started early, and to talk to your chair about it, even when you're doing your comps, talking about what your plan is so that you don't start a project that the gatekeepers really will hold up the gate and it will be difficult to get access. And then you find yourself going into several supplemental courses down the line because you're having difficulty getting access to your population. So it's never too soon to start thinking about feasibility. I love when students talk about using existing instruments because you don't have to worry about creating something. You can use something that's already established and reliable and valid. So the word for the day, at least from my perspective, is feasibility, feasibility, feasibility. And going into your comp course is a great time. Talk to other people. Emily and I have talked. It's so important to talk to people about your ideas so that you can really have something that's manageable. I see students who have their heart set on certain topics, and it's wonderful to be excited and energized, but you have your whole career ahead of you. You don't want to take on too much at the dissertation level and then find yourself struggling to get through the process.
Thank you so much, Dr. Garrett. And I absolutely echo the sentiment of having discussions about what you would like to do your research on, and even just verbalizing it helps you understand what is feasible and what might not be feasible in the time that you would like to graduate. We have a few more questions here. If you want to select a different chair than your CMP professor, how do you go about doing that? And I'll just preface with this may be different for each school. So Dr. Biddle, Dr. Lindsay, is that your experience? Or
I wonder if Dr. Garrett can answer that one, or that might be more of a dean of students idea.
Yeah, Dr. Garrett, are you able to answer that from your perspective?
Yes, just because I do work in the community with other deans of students, and it really varies
Okay.
by school. Typically, when a student is interested in a change, am I understanding that correctly?
The change. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they need to have a a very solid argument. If you come to a dean of students and say, I want to change because my topic has changed, my interest has changed, and there is someone who is a subject matter expert in this area that I really want to work with, then the dean of students might be willing to help you make the change if, like Dr. Biddle said earlier, the faculty member is actually available. A lot of times scheduling is difficult because people are already pretty full in terms of how many students that they serve. But if you want to change because you don't like how the feedback is sounding, that's when we are not likely to make a change. Sometimes students think, oh, they're just being harsh because they're not used to how much feedback you really get during this process. It's an iterative process, and they're going to say, go try again. And it might not feel good. They're not trying to be mean. It's not personal. They really are trying to prepare you so you have a solid proposal, a solid dissertation. So requests when it's just like, I'm butting heads with my chair, might not get that far. But if you have a really solid rationale for why you think the change would be valuable for you and your work, then they'll be likely to consider the request and try to support you in any way they can.
Thanks, Dr. Garrett. Any other comments on that? If not, I'm going to move to one other question. Okay. Someone had asked if we can make appointments with the IRB. I am actually going to put the link to the IRB right now in the chat. They do have the ability to register for office hours. You can attend group sessions. There's resource materials on getting started at the IRB and preparing your IRB documents, all in that resource center. Question about, can we use previous researchers' semi-structured interview for a qualitative study? And I'm just going to start with Dr. Lindsay.
Yeah, I would say that it's a good idea. However, it also needs to work with the constructs that you have. So if you're redoing that person's study, that's not a good idea. But if you kind of tweak those questions to work for yours, it'll help. It'll keep from having to do too much field testing when you get to the point. Kathy, did you have something?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, Kathy, do you have anything?
Oh, you're talking about me? Oh.
Yeah, you had your hand raised earlier. Go ahead. Did you have a question?
Yeah, it was, I was the one that initially talked about the problem and problem statement,
Yes.
because throughout my courses, I had to use it and, write papers on them, but I started getting different feedback from two different professors. One said it was good, then another one said, no, that's not a problem. So I just becoming confused and overwhelmed. So that's why I jumped on this course. I was like,
yeah, the closer you get to the end, the more specific feedback you're going to get. So in the research block, definitely look at that feedback that you're getting there. And then, of course, definitely look at what your chair is telling you, because the chair is looking at, does this construct work with this construct and what's out there in literature now?
Because that's a good point, Dr. Lindsay. That's something to consider too, right? So when you're in the beginning of your doctoral journey and you might have your heart set on a specific topic, and then 2-3 years into your journey, well, 2 years into your journey, then you come to find out maybe it's already been done, or you need to pivot and switch because of X, Y, Z. And so my personal suggestion is taking the time to have conversations with your faculty members. I have actively reached out to ask questions and have conversations about what I'd like to do research in. And I can 100% tell you, for my journey, it has changed from when I began to where I am now. And I think that's okay. I think that's a part of the process.
Okay, but the problem that I had is that
yes.
I'm in my research courses.
Mm-hmm.
The one professor in my quantitative was okay with it, but the professor in my qualitative said no. and then one course after the other.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm all messed up right now.
Yeah, I teach both qualitative and quantitative. And I try to look at it the way that if you're working into a dissertation, that is this going to work into a dissertation? So I can help you now. Why don't we get together? Are you a School of Public Safety person?
No, School of Business.
School of Business. Okay. I can get you, contact me afterwards, and I can we'll talk about your stuff, because it kind of seems like there's something, I wouldn't say wonky, but there's something going on, and we can probably work it out. And I'll find you somebody to talk to over there.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathy, for your question. And I think it's always good to ask clarifying questions. I mean, that's what the journey is about. We are at time. I would like to thank Dr. Biddle and Dr. Lindsay for coming today and presenting and trying to prepare our students to be successful in their CMP class. And as always, we are looking at options to provide sessions for you that will help you in your academic journey. So please feel free to contact the Graduate Studies Support Center and give us your ideas of what you'd like to see more of in the future, or complete the survey at the end of this session. And I will take a look and do my very best to provide you options that meet your needs. Until the next time, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Take care.